What are the country's top CEOs doing to build extraordinary teams and cultures who thrive even during a pandemic? You're about to take a deep dive into the minds of wildly successful C-suite leaders who are evolving the way that we work in the 21st century. Welcome to this special edition of How to Be Mesmerizing.
Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and we have another special mesmerizing guest with us. Michael Gottlieb is with us. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
So excited to have you. So we've been interviewing all kinds of amazing CEOs and leaders and mesmerizing people. And today we have found ourselves a human-centric attorney out of Maryland. So sometimes that can be challenging to find a lawyer that is so people-centric and so much wanting to help people to be able to use their business as a force for good. And Michael, you are one of the best in the world at doing that. In fact, your clients say that bringing humanity to client services is challenging. Making law feel more human, can be challenging, and you're the best at it. So I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's dive in. So Michael, you love working with entrepreneurs. How did that happen?
So I started my firm about 8 years ago. I've been practicing law for quite some time now. And what I learned practicing law all these years is that every law firm does the same, follows one of two pathways. They either pick a vertical market, so they become the restaurant lawyer, government contract lawyer, or whatever it may be, or they pick practice areas, so business lawyer, divorce lawyer, criminal law, whatever it may be. And one day I had this really interesting experience, Tim. In the morning, I had a client call. He was an owner of a home healthcare company. We'll call that owner Fred. And Fred called. I saw his name on the caller ID, and it was okay. The call was fine. Helped Fred. He had a question or a concern about an employee and how to address it, and the call was okay. It was nothing remarkable, and it was really quite forgettable until the next call, which we'll call her Wilma. So Wilma calls, and before I've even answered the phone, I'm smiling like it's Wilma. I'm excited to get to talk with her. Wilma also owned a home healthcare company, and as it turns out, coincidentally, she happened to also have a question about dealing with an employee issue. But the call was so different. It had so much energy. It was so much fun to talk with her. And when I got off the call, I was so conflicted because I was like, wait a second, same vertical and same practice area. How could I have such incredibly different responses and such different experiences working with those two clients? And what I realized was that Fred, well, he was just a business owner. He was self-employed, basically. And he didn't really have a lot of energy or passion. On the other hand, Wilma, she was amazing. She wanted to grow and take over her corner of the world. She was an entrepreneur. And at that moment, what I realized was I only want to work with people just like Wilma. People who have this passion and energy to grow and build and scale the thing that they're doing, because I was feeding off of that. And it was fun. And I thought, I could do this. I could have a practice where all I do is work with people who are super fun to work with. It doesn't mean that they're in like the most exciting industries in the whole world. They're not necessarily all rocket scientists, though we have worked with some of those too. But what we found is that if they're excited about what they're doing, then it's super fun to work with them. And so I decided I'm going to build a law practice based on a personality type of an entrepreneur. And it's been an amazing ride.
Yeah. I mean, even the name of your practice, Momentum Law Group, all about momentum. Entrepreneurs love that. And there's plenty of business owners out there that, want to, or are very passionate about growing, but a lot of people just do not have that entrepreneur mindset. They just don't think about, I want to conquer the world. They're thinking about, how do I get through today? Right. And so, there's plenty of business leaders out there who do have that mindset, who are exciting to work with, but the majority of people out there are not as visionary as many entrepreneurs are. And so there is that excitement to working with someone who wants to really use their business as a dynamic force for good in the world. So, but I believe that everybody can have that mindset, and that's why we're teaming up and talking about this today. So it makes a lot of sense to find out who your ideal clients are, and then really serve them, because then you love what you do and life is more fulfilling. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
It is. And one of the things that I found, Tim, that has been interesting for other people to watch us do is we are really, really picky about who we work with. So picky, in fact, that I would say that far fewer than 50% of the people that will reach out to us will we accept as clients. And because I feel a little bit like I'm a kid in fifth grade picking sides for a team. And when I was a kid, you're always trying to pick the fastest, the strongest, whatever, whoever's best able to play that game or sport. Well, now what I'm looking for is the clients that are going to be the most fun to work with, the ones that are going to be our ideal clients as we have created our ideal client profile. So when we do that, what we're doing is we're really improving the likelihood that our clients are generally going to love us, and that it's going to be a great experience from both my side in the firm as well as theirs, so that they feel like this isn't just a transaction. This isn't just a short-term thing, we're not just a scribe for them, but we're a part of their team. And when that happens, well, several things happen. One, it makes it far more likely that they're going to stay with us for a long time because we are part of their team. And two, it also makes it so that when somebody says, hey, I need a lawyer, their hands go up quickly and say, we've had a good experience working with Michael and his team. And that makes me feel great.
Yeah. Well, it's smart because you're only selecting 1 out of 2 applicants. And so it makes sense to hang out with the people that you enjoy working with the most, because then you're going to give them the best service you possibly can. And it feels like a real partnership and a collaboration. And you're genuinely more excited to get up and help people if you're looking forward to talking with them. So that makes a lot of sense to do that.
And I know how lucky I am, because many of the lawyers that I've met, I won't say most, but certainly a large number, they do what they do because they're stuck in it, right? They don't love what they're doing. In fact, many are not happy at all. And I love what I get to do. Some point, somebody asked me, if you won the lottery and never had to work again, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd take a 2-week vacation because I've never done that. And I would come right back here and do this. And I maybe wouldn't worry so much about whether somebody paid or didn't pay, because I had all the money that I needed. So who cares? But I would do this because it's fun for me. And there are times where I find myself thinking, I can't believe that I have found a thing that I love to do so much, that I seem to be pretty okay at doing, and that people value it, that they're willing to pay me what they pay me. Like, this is remarkable. I hope everybody should have this experience, or will have this experience. So I feel so grateful that I get to.
Well, it's funny, and I've mentioned this before, how a lot of times people who think like you and I feel like we got lucky, but truly you created your own luck, right? Because you thought about what you wanted, you thought about what you didn't. You're turning away 50% of business that a lot of people would never do, right? Because you know who your ideal client is. So I really don't think it's luck. I think that it's a mindset, right? And you having the courage to be able to lean in and emphasize what you value most, and then find a way to monetize that. And so, that's how you create the kind of life that is most fulfilling, by doing just that. So, yeah, it's really powerful. You also talked about how a lot of times attorneys are looking either for an axe, right, or a scalpel, or they're looking for someone to come in and be tough and mean, and that bulldog attorney. So how do you deal with that? What do you do in that situation?
So we have a big sign in our office that says the momentum law approach: psychology, business, and then law. And it's exactly what you just said, Tim. I believe that a lot of times lawyers believe that the tool in their toolbox is the law. And it's a tool for sure. And sometimes it's the right tool, but often it is the axe when you needed a scalpel, right? It required some level of precision. And you just said, contract says this, the law says that, and we're going to come after you. And it's like, you're coming from this really aggressive standpoint. Even if it's a negotiation, we're never going to agree to that. And I'm not a litigator, so that's all I do is negotiate. And what I found is that psychology, and what I believe is psychology drives everything that we do. So if we understand that, if we can take that approach and get it into our heads that the person that's on the other side of the table, they're a person, they're feeling, they're having an experience, and what's the experience that they're having that's leading them to respond the way that they are? And what can we do to get to the place where everybody wants to be? And so we use psychology as our leading tool, as our approach for how we start with everything. So everything that we're looking at, I don't necessarily start with what the words on the page are. I want to start from, why is the other side, if they're doing something that we don't necessarily feel good about, why are they doing it? It may be an acquisition target that we're looking at, like why is a buyer or a seller saying this? Why is an employee acting this way? Why is a vendor that we want to engage working with us in this way that we don't feel good about, or a customer, whatever it may be, and trying to better understand it so that we can get to a place where my client has gotten the thing that they wanted to. So what we find is that by starting with psychology, it doesn't always work. Sometimes if you're working with a really, really large organization and you're not necessarily at a decision-making person, they just have to say no because their boss has told them they have to say no, right? Like here's the four corners and we have to stay within that. And then we look at the business issues, and then ultimately we can look at the law. But what I find is that if you can help somebody understand, if you can understand what they believe and what they're feeling and what they're concerned about, because everything's always about the concern, right? I don't want to agree to that because I'm worried that this thing is going to happen, whatever that bad outcome is that they're worried about. Well, if I can help them better understand why I'm concerned about what I'm concerned about, then a lot of times it's easy to say, so I understand your concern, Tim. I believe it's this. Does that sound right to you? Yeah, okay. Well, here's my client's concern. What's a good solution here? And it is rare that somebody says, well, I'm just going to stick to my guns, right? Because I've now opened the door to a line of communication that oftentimes they're not used to seeing. And it can be really helpful.
That is brilliant. It is brilliant. It's, we talk about this when with leaders communicating with the people that they're leading, to understand where they're coming from, to seek first to understand, then be understood, to have compassion and empathy, and enough of it to want to know what they're really afraid of, right? What the real objection is, and let's focus on solving that, so that we're on the same team, kind of, instead of fighting each other, right? So instead of being adversarial or aggressive, we're trying to create that, what you said, draw new lines and open a new door so that we can have a more fruitful conversation, so that we can create synergy, right? As Stephen Covey would say. And that's what we would do with those relationships. Why wouldn't we do them in any relationship like that, right? And including the relationship you'd be having speaking as an attorney.
So I've been working, this one particular client has had explosive growth over the last year or so. And she's been working, her clients are all Fortune 500 companies. And Fortune 500 companies can be a little bit hard to negotiate with because they want to keep everything the same, right? So they want to know that this contract is exactly the same as the contract they had for any other similar vendor. And so we were negotiating this one contract, and it's literally we've been 6 months. And as of yesterday, we finally agreed on all of the outstanding points. So I think we're there. But one of the things that they had asked for was something that we couldn't give them. And the initial way that we were negotiating was very frustrating. We were literally just handing the paper back and forth. I would cross something out and make, my change. She would say, no, we can't agree. And I'm like, and so at some point I started writing these detailed comments. And this one particular issue was such a big issue for us and such a big issue for them that if we hadn't been able to bridge the gap, we wouldn't have been able to work with them, because what they asked us to do was to assign all of the intellectual property associated with our product to them. Well, and at some point I wrote a comment. I said, we would love to accommodate this. However, if we did, you'd be the last client we could ever work with, because we wouldn't own any intellectual property anymore, and we wouldn't be able to provide this service to any other customer. And her comment back in the next round was, that makes sense. I understand. We can back off. And I was like, oh, fantastic. Right. And all it took was just us having that conversation. It was interesting because the way that she was working, the attorney on the other side, was she just wanted to do it via email, trading the document back and forth. Tell us what you want. Like, well, maybe it would be better if we have a call. And so instead of having a call because she didn't want to, I decided I'm going to communicate with her the same way by acknowledging what she would be concerned about and telling her why this was a problem for us. And as soon as she read it, like the next version, we're good. Like, oh, okay, this works, even in writing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Instead of trying to force someone to communicate in a way that makes them uncomfortable, you spoke their language, and then you just shifted your approach. You know, a lot of times when we have a one way of communicating, that's the only way we have. And then we just try to do it more forcefully. And that's that you have different tools in a toolbox for a reason. And so you were able to pull out more effective tools, and that's what got you the outcome that you were looking for, which is really great.
I remember years ago, worked for a law firm, and there was an attorney, and we had a large space. It was a small firm, but we had a large space, and I was really far down the hall. Mm-hmm. And one day, I hadn't been at the firm very long, maybe just a couple of weeks. I heard somebody screaming, and I'm like, whoa, like it was a very quiet place, right? It's a law firm, everybody's just doing their work. And I hear somebody screaming, and I go out of my office and like peek around and like, what's going on? And what I learned was that it was one of the attorneys, and he was screaming at the opposing counsel. And like, he wasn't just screaming, he was rude. He was saying things that I'm like, really? I'd never heard a lawyer say that to another lawyer before. And I found myself thinking, this is not who I am. This is not who I want to be. This beating somebody over the head with a hammer approach to being a lawyer, that's not what this should be. And so from that point was an interesting mental shift in my mind, because I came up with this idea that I want to change the way that people look at their lawyers. And I'm going to do it one client at a time, right? And there are going to be those people that really, really want the person who's yelling and screaming. And that's okay. They can go talk to him. But for the rest of the people that aren't that way, that believe there is a more cooperative way to get to yes, then I might be a better fit.
Well, yes, for sure. I think that you're hiring someone to produce the outcome that you want. And I've always been taught that you catch more bees with honey than vinegar. Yep. And so that old idea of you want that mean lawyer that's going to be screaming and acting ridiculous. Why do you want that? Because you think that the only way you're going to have your victory is if you have somebody that's that way. And in the world we live in now, there often that is going to be the opposite approach to get what you want, because the person you're yelling at is either, we live in a new world where people aren't going to tolerate that kind of behavior, or you're dealing with somebody who is going to take that as a challenge. And now it won't even matter what the deal is about. Now it's personal and they just need to lose. And that's just not getting the outcome that you want.
So there are two things that brings up for me. One, is the client somebody I would even want to work with if that's the approach that they're going to take? I want you to destroy that person. I've had people say that to me before, and I've had to tell them I'm not a good fit, right? I understand you're angry, and I'd be angry if I was in your position too. But we're not going to try to destroy somebody here. We're going to try to do what's right. So that's number one. And the second part of it is, I agree with you that it's just a better life when you're not carrying so much negative energy. Like, if I lived in that world where I was screaming at people all day, well, who am I going to become? Who am I going to be when I go home to my wife and kids? Like, how easy is it to turn that off? Right. Yeah. But if I've had a day where I've spent the day doing things that I feel good about, that I feel proud of, and that's one of the things I tell my kids all the time, whatever it is you're doing, put the level of effort where you feel like you're proud of yourself for doing that thing. Make the decisions that you're proud of. And when you act in a way where you feel like, I really do feel proud of myself, then I believe I have the better ability and capacity to be a good husband to my wife, and to be a good father to my kids. So I don't think I could, for myself, maybe just not that mentally strong, but I don't think I could separate the two. I don't think I could go turn it off the moment I get in the car and just be the kind of dad or husband that I'd feel proud of being if I'd been that way at work all day long.
Oh, I agree. It's extremely difficult to turn that off. And so when I was, I'm thinking about 10 years ago, I had a bunch of attorneys that were coming to me for, the counseling and the coaching that I was providing. It seems like some weeks everybody that came in was a nurse. And then one day, one week it would be attorneys, and one day it would be police officers, and one day it would be, athletes. I mean, it would come in waves, right? And so, but I remember the attorney week, and I was like, I would never want to be an attorney because everybody was so stressed out. They had no time for themselves. They were coming in because they were drinking too much, or they had gained a lot of weight, and they were just struggling with the stress and being around the kind of energy. And so, like you said before, sometimes we're in a position where our particular job, we see the worst sides of humans, of people. And when you're in that energy all the time, you can't help but it rub off on you. And so we got to have effective ways of doing that. But you were able to decide, I want to make sure that I'm enjoying what I'm doing so that when I come home, my energy is positive and supportive and encouraging. And so for those who don't have that, it is possible. You just got to upgrade your tools and often your beliefs and perception of what's going on. Yeah.
One of my favorite books is by Gay Hendricks, called The Big Leap. And one of the things that he talks about in The Big Leap is finding your zone of genius, which is flow or whatever term. But in terms of the zone of genius, it's where you're getting to do something that you love to do, and you're great at it. And everyone that I've talked to that has read the book has had the first initial thought of that self-doubt of, do I have a zone of genius? And when I started thinking about it, what I realized is the zone of genius, you're in it when you lose the relationship between time and space effectively, right? Like all of a sudden 2 hours have passed and you're like, oh my gosh, I was so engaged in what I was doing. I was really enjoying it. And how did all this time pass? I got to go, right? I was supposed to go do something else. And when I realized for me what my zone of genius was, I made the decision after I realized it that I want to spend a tiny bit more of every single day in that zone of genius. And so part of it is also just going to be being so selective about who we work with, because when we're working with that personality type, if we were, that is super angry, that has all that negative energy, well, I'm never going to be in my zone of genius because they're not engaging with me in a way that allows me to get to where I want to be. And I know a lot of folks listening may think, well, that's nice for you, Michael, but I need to put food on the table, so I got to take every client that I can. And I'm going to tell you that you probably don't have to. And that when you start saying no and start being a little bit more selective about who is a great fit for you, that what you're going to find is that there's going to be more clients that are going to come to you. In fact, one of my favorite client stories I was thinking about this morning before we started our interview, I had said no to the client 3 times. And what had happened was somebody who was referred to me by a dear friend. And I try to say yes to those folks because I want to make sure that my friend feels valued by my helping out their friend. But in this case, it just wasn't a good fit. It was a litigation matter, just wasn't what we do. And so I had politely declined it multiple times. And I was never talking to the owner. I was talking to, we'll call him the chief operations officer. And at some point he said, how come you keep saying no? And I would always give him the best advice I could, right? It's what Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called Getting Naked. And one of his principles is give it away. And so I would say, look, we're not a good fit for each other from an attorney-client, but here's something you might be able to do on your own without even having to engage a lawyer. And would walk him through it and give him some ideas. And then at some point he said, how come you keep saying no? And I tried to explain who our client profile was and that we didn't do anything on a transaction basis. We're looking to be general counsel to our clients. And he said, well, we need a lawyer. I don't think the owners of the company really like their lawyer. And I said, I kind of feel like you might be telling me a story right now to try to get me to take this one particular thing. And he said, no, will you come down and meet with us? And so I went down, and it turns out that it was an architecture firm. And I'm just outside of DC, and these folks had this beautiful office in Georgetown. And one of the first things I saw was they had designed a cigar bar. So I was sitting in their conference room, and they had a TV showing all the different things that they had built. And they had designed this cigar bar, which I love going to. Smoke maybe 3 cigars at most a year, but when I'm smoking them, I want to be in that room because it's just a beautiful place. And I was like, you guys built that? And that's how we started the conversation. And in fact, they are one of my very favorite clients. Every meeting we have at the cigar bar. So that's where we go. And what a great way to have, and they knew exactly what I was looking for in a client. They're like, we didn't know that lawyers would engage with us this way. And I said, this is what I want to change, right? Yes. And like I said, they're one of my favorite clients. I absolutely adore working with them. And it's fun to get to go to the cigar bar time and again with them. So I do believe that if you have the strength and plan, and that's an important part of it, to be able to say, I'm going to start moving towards working with just the clients I want to work with and moving towards my zone of genius every day, just a little tiny bit. Just take one little tiny step each day towards doing that. One day you're going to look back and you're like, this is awesome. Like, I'm not doing the things I didn't want to be doing. And I'm getting to work with people that I feel really good about. And somehow or another, I'm still okay financially on top of all that, right? And so I think we can all get there. We just have to be willing to take that first step off the ledge. And it doesn't have to be off the cliff. It can be a little tiny step, right? Stair steps down into the cavern.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I love everything you said about it. You know, your zone of genius also isn't just what you do. It's how you show up, right? It's what the story you're telling yourself. So many people tell themselves the story of why they can't and what's not possible and why it wouldn't work out. And then that becomes their reality. Right. You know, a big part of my zone of genius isn't even what I do. It's wanting to get from today instead of just get through it, right? To actually be happy today, hang out with cool people, do fun things, engage in activities that I feel are really valuable to others and making a difference. And so sometimes you have work, like I have to do my taxes. That's not making me feel like I'm in my zone of genius, right? But I do know that getting that done, I can have some music in the background. I can light a candle. I can know that when I get those taxes done, that's going to benefit my family. And so I can create value in what I'm doing or connect the dots and know that what I'm doing is making a difference for somebody. And that can be a zone of genius as well. So that you're creating a more fulfilling experience on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you can't change your job. Sometimes you can't change your employees or your clients or who you're working with, but you can always change your mindset about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I think about the fact that I'm a lawyer and so many are not happy, and I'm always telling other people and myself, I love what I get to do, not what I have to do or what I do, but what I get to do. And I start thinking about what it really means. And as an attorney, we're not doctors. We're not saving people's lives for the most part. I mean, criminal lawyers certainly may be able to do that in certain instances. But for the most part, what I'm doing is something that I feel great about doing, that I feel like was within my skill set. But the thing that I also think about is how much I appreciate our clients for trusting in me that I can do the thing that they need help with. And that's when I really start thinking about, I get to do something. I get to be somebody's lawyer. And that's a privilege, right? Even if what I'm doing in that particular moment isn't super fun, they're relying upon me. And that makes me feel amazing, right? Like, how cool is this, that I'm good enough at something that somebody else is willing to pay me to do it and trust me to do it the right way? That's pretty freaking cool.
Well said. Now, you've created this side business that's called Momentum Shift because you wanted to help people create a legacy life map, right? Because of an experience that you had personally, and you're like, oh, this is a problem that people need help with. So let's talk about that real quick.
Sure. So approximately 10 years ago, my mom passed away. And when she passed away, I became the executor of her estate. And I'd never been an executor of an estate because I'm not an estate planning attorney. We have one here in the firm, but this was actually before I'd even started the firm. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what was involved. And what I learned was there's a whole bunch of legal stuff. And as it turns out, some of it was complicated, and I actually hired a lawyer to handle that stuff. But what I really was surprised by, Tim, was how much I didn't know about the day-to-day stuff about my mom. I didn't know where she banked. I didn't know if she had a financial advisor. I didn't know what to feed her dog or who the doggy's vet was. I didn't know anything. I didn't know I didn't know whether she had a mortgage on her condo. I didn't know whether who to call when there was a problem in the condo before I could sell it. And I was just really struck by the amount of time I was wasting just sitting. I remember this as though it was yesterday. I was sitting, she had a big walk-in closet in her condo, and I had a file cabinet, and I was sitting on the floor with a stack of paper this tall, just going through, looking at each piece of paper with the idea of, is this important? Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know whether anything was important, what was important, or even how to determine whether it was important. So I'm literally just flipping pages. And I spent hours and hours and hours doing it. And it stunk. It was awful. And it meant that I was doing that and not grieving and healing, because I'm sitting just mired in crap, right? Like just doing this thing. And I thought, there's a way to solve this. And that came to me much more recently as I started thinking about other family members who have passed away. Both my aunt and uncle passed over the last few years. And I wanted to not have this situation again. And so I started thinking, well, what information would make it easier for me as the executor, as an heir, to manage from the transition from the person being here to them not being here. And that became the legacy life map. And so what we do is we spend about an hour with our clients, and we ask the questions that we believe are going to make it easier for those people that they leave behind to transition from the person being here to not being here. So it is all those kinds of things, from who's your accountant, who's your lawyer. And there are books that do this, by the way, where you can buy for a couple of dollars on Amazon a book and you fill it out. What makes what we're doing different is the deliverable is important, but it's also the psychological part of it, of I've done something great and helpful for my clients, or for my family, where when you're thinking about it, one of our clients told me that as we were finishing doing this project with him, he said, this is an act of love for my daughters, right? Like, this is the final act of love. Them having this thing that means that they're not going to have to waste a ton of time trying to figure it all out. And they're just going to have every answer right there. He said, this is an act of love, and I feel great that we're doing it. And he said, and Michael, I love you for doing this. And I was like, it was just one of the warmest things that anybody had ever said to me, from a client perspective. And I was like, wow, this is good. I want to be able to do this and bring this to the world.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, right? Yeah. I thought that was so powerful when you first shared that with me. I wanted to make sure that we had it recorded so that people have that awareness, because I never thought about that. I mean, I have so much, if I wasn't here tomorrow, my wife, I don't know what she would do, because I have so much stuff, so many things spread out over the place. I have documents. I have a 4-page document that's just passwords from all the online programs and everything that I have. And so it would be a nightmare, really, to be for her. Where would you even begin? And so, yeah.
I had one friend of mine, he called me, or he sent me a text one morning, and he said he knew we were building this. This was several months ago. And he said, "Are you ready to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, we're ready. We've done a couple, so we're there. We're doing it. We're actually providing the service." And he said, "Thank goodness." I said, "What's going on? What's the trigger?" He said, "I woke up in the middle of the night last night and realized that I own a lot of cryptocurrency, and my wife wouldn't know how to access it, and it will be worth a lot of money one day. It's worth a lot today, but it'll be worth an awful lot in the future. And if I don't do something to record this in a way that I can then convey it to her, it's going to be gone forever." And he said, "So we got to do this." And I was like, "Okay." So we got him his within the next week or so, did the interview, and we're able to give him back his legacy life map. And I know that he feels a sense of relief now, right? Because he's done the thing. So nobody wants to talk about death. And what we talk about are all data points. So it's not making the difficult decisions that you have to make in a will of who do I want the guardian of my children to be, and who's going to be the trustee of the trust, and who is efficient and organized enough to be an executor, right? You're not making those decisions. So while we're asking you to talk about what happens when you're not here, we're doing it in a different way. We're not asking who gets what, because that's part of your will, but it's all data points. Who are these people? What are these things? One of the things that we've been asking our clients in this regard, which has been really fun from my perspective, is I want you to imagine, Tim, that I'm walking around your house with you, and I want you to show me the 4 or 5 up to 10 things that are the most important things in possessions that you have in your house. And because a lot of times our families don't know, right? They don't know that that one book that's on the bookshelf behind you was signed by the author and like changed your life, right? And maybe that's something you'd want your kids to know if they don't already know about it, or that one of the books is written by a family member, or whatever it may be. It's been really interesting, and it's actually what we finish the discussion with. So we kind of finish on a very light note, but it's a very powerful note. And so I've enjoyed doing these interviews. It's also interesting to see where people feel guarded and helping them feel better about it. Because one of the things that's nice is, because I'm not part of their family, if we're talking about who's your financial advisor and do you own any private investments, do you own cryptocurrency, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just writing it down. And ultimately, I'm going to give it to who you want me to give it to. Right. Or it's going to go to who you want it to give it to be given to. But it isn't the same as if you go ask mom and dad, "Hey, do you have any cryptocurrency? What am I going to get when you die?" Right? Because that's what they're hearing, right? Yeah. And so I'm just making it so that we know what there is, and not who's going to get it or anything about that. So what we're finding is that most folks seem pretty okay about sharing the information. And one of the other things that we thought a lot about is, if Tim's going to be the recipient of this, what information is really going to help Tim? Does he need to know the account number? No, he never needs to know the account number. If we know that there's a bank account with Chase Bank, that's all he needs to know, right? And he's going to reach out to Chase Bank and say, "Hey, mom had an account here, and what do we need to do as our next step?" You don't need to know the account number. Chase knows the account number, right? You're going to provide all the legal documents that the lawyer will give you, but you don't need that. So one of the reasons that we've been really thoughtful from the standpoint of not necessarily, I'm not talking about being kind, but just like really putting a lot of thought into it. What information does Tim need? And also what information does he not need? Because I also know that the world can be a little bit of a scary place from a data perspective. If somebody stole this thing, it wouldn't help a stranger, right? Knowing that you bank at Chase is not going to help somebody be able to get into your bank account, right? If I put the bank account number, that's going to be a problem, right? But knowing that you have an account at this place, or that this person's your financial advisor, those things are not even that hard to figure out, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody could follow you and say, oh, you just walked into Bank of America, you must be a Bank of America customer, right? So we've really put a lot of thought into trying to make sure that even if this fell into the wrong hands, whether somebody got hacked or somebody just was a bad actor, that they're not going to be able to do too much with it. It's only going to prove to be super valuable to the people it's super valuable for.
Yeah. So. Brilliant. Michael Gottlieb, amazing. So much valuable information. So how can people learn more about you and your practice and all your cool programs?
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. So our website is momentumlawyers.com, and we are in the process of building out our new Momentum Shift website. So that's not quite live, but they can certainly reach us at connect@momentumlawyers.com.
Outstanding. Awesome. Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show today. It was awesome. Very mesmerizing.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Tim. You ever wonder why so many talented, hardworking entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with inconsistent self-belief or high stress or procrastination or self-sabotage? Well, the answer may surprise you, and the solution is already inside of you. I've been searching for the answers to this for decades, and I found them, and I put it into a new program called The Power of Your Unconscious Mind, Mental Secrets for Accelerating Success. And because you're a listener, I want to give you a free VIP copy. Head over to powermindsetprogram.com. That's powermindsetprogram.com and grab your copy today.